Okay, hi everyone. My name is Steve Bennett. I'm talking today about some of Australia's recent open data and mapping history. So I work at Data61, which is the recent merger of part of CSIRO and what used to be called NICTA. So like most countries, we have been slowly getting our act together in spatial over about the last 10 years. And I'm going to pick up the story at the end of those bullet points. I've only got 15 minutes, so I'm going to talk fast. Suffice to say, in 2013, things were starting to look good, except that the government was starting to go down the path of building lots of different, totally disconnected mapping applications. Imagine each of these is a different agency. They've each got a different pile of data. They want to expose that data to the world, and they were looking at spending lots of money building custom mapping applications. And then my boss, Bill Simpson-Young on the left, spoke to Drew Clark, the then Secretary of the Department of Communications, and said, hey, I have an amazing idea. Why don't you not spend all that money building custom mapping applications and instead use this nifty new open source 3D globe mapping application thing called Cesium, and let's see if that would work. And he came up with this idea that give him 2 programmers and 3 months, and he will make this, well, his 2 programmers will make this thing that they'll call National Map. It will talk directly to various departments' map services directly, and you can have basically the one map. It works across all the different agencies, and basically you save a whole bunch of money. And government being government, they said, well, it's nice, but we're not quite ready to change everything we do quite this fast. We'll go with Google. And they headed off down the path of Google Maps Engine and Google Earth. And the estimate came back that was going to cost $14 squillion. And Bill said, don't worry, I'm still here. I can totally do this. Remember, 2 programmers, 3 months. We'll build this thing for you. And Drew said, all right, you got 3 months. Go for it. The design principles, in retrospect, this seems really obvious, but at the time it was kind of groundbreaking. The principles were to build something that was, used an open source front end. All the data was loaded direct from custodians into the browser, so without having some sort of big aggregation behind the scenes. Therefore, promoting that data from any agency at any level of jurisdiction, from local government all the way through to federal government, would be accessed directly, so that if the data appears in our front end, then it can also be used by anybody else for other purposes. And believe it or not, 2 programmers in 3 months is pretty much what they achieved. So this is just before my time. And in early July 2014, at the start of our national open data programming competition called GovHack, the thing was launched, National Map. And okay, it didn't look quite the best because in 3 months you don't get a lot of time for UX and UI design. But it was announced by the then Minister for Communications, Malcolm Turnbull, and he was very happy. And by delivering a solution quickly like that, we got some trust from the government, and they gave us permission to go and extend the platform a bit further and see where we could go with it. So after a couple of years, it's been refined and is actually more like a real application as opposed to something that a couple of guys threw together in 3 months. And it is now lots of code and supports a huge range of features. And Malcolm Turnbull, who was then the happy Minister for Communications, is now the happy Prime Minister. And he was so happy with the national map that he's actually taken it with him from the Department of Communications, and now it resides within the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. And that screen capture is from a couple of weeks ago when he actually visited our building in Sydney. And in the background, that's National Map. So he was making an announcement about some new funding for cybersecurity or something dreadfully important, but pretty boring. Sorry. So where have we got to after all of this happiness and funding and investment? Basically, we've got the national map. It has data from pretty much, well, a very wide range of government agencies. So pretty much if you're an Australian government agency at any level and you have geospatial servers that are accessible on the web, we have probably tracked you down and sucked your data into our catalogue, and we now have some thousands of data layers in there. And now is the time for the demo when things will most likely crash. Whoa, that actually did happen. I think that was just when the resolution changed. So national map looks like this. We have a catalogue along the side. As you can see, we have data. So the top data there, the national data sets, they're kind of hand-selected, really good quality data sets that cover the whole country. And then these ones down here, we have ones from each of the different states. And also, we can do things like connect to other people's data catalogues. So data.gov.au is pretty similar to your data.gov or data.gov.uk. That's a CKAN server. So we connect to it, well, rather, the browser connects to it, looks for some data, and I'm going to pick randomly. This is also a terrible idea. Let's go and find out about Ballarat artwork. And in this case, okay, so now we found the locations of artwork in Ballarat, which is a large town 2 hours to the west of Melbourne. Or we can look at some of these hand-picked data sets like the broadband ADSL availability. I'm going to talk even faster. So lots of data sets on there. In the last year or two, councils, sort of like your counties, but even smaller, are starting to publish more and more data sets. OpenCouncilData.org, you can see how many they're publishing. And what we've done is now split off the actual software that drives National Map into this thing called Terria. And if you want to learn more about it, you should come to my workshop yesterday. But the story is basically over time we've kind of progressively decoupled it. So first TerriaJS got separated out, and then we split out TerriaJS into TerriaMap. So the JS is just the JavaScript libraries, and TerriaMap has all the HTML and the glue that holds the whole thing together. And now we've split out the catalog as well. And then it has an architecture. And look at all those things we support. It's a pretty broad range of stuff that we support directly in the browser. Socrata, CKAN, CZML, WebMap tile service. 3D tiles are now coming as are Mapbox vector tiles, WPS, a sensor observation service. And this really cool thing, region map CSV. So basically you take a CSV file, like literally CSV file, and for your viewing pleasure, I have added US state support. So here's this data set explaining where I'm going on my trip to the US. Is Steve going there? North Carolina, yes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and drop this file from my desktop into the browser. Wait, I just realized that's the wrong window. Yes. Into the browser. Wish me luck. Whoa. And voila. So basically it's really long story how that works. It's quite magical. It can happen very, very fast. And in fact, I'm going to show you another example with a super huge data set. Remove. So here's a data set of 55,000 statistical areas. So what that is a spreadsheet, 55,000 rows, and it's going to load it into the browser, find all the regions that they map against, and color code them according to the other values in the spreadsheet there. So where has that got us? Now we roll out Terria's left, right, and center. We have, it becomes so easy to share data sources that we just, even when data is only sort of tangentially useful to a map, you just pull it in because you can, and it takes you 2 seconds. So we have the renewables map called ARENI. That's the Australian Renewable Energy Mapping Infrastructure. There's NEII, which has environmental information funded by the Bureau of Meteorology. There's the Northern Australia Investment Map. There's the Global Risk Map. There's the City of Sydney Map. And this one is about urban research called Oran Map. There's documentation about it, and we have all kinds of open source all over GitHub. So basically, as time goes by, I don't know if everybody else has this problem as well, you just create more and more repositories because you're just so full of love for the open source approach. There's our fresh new documentation, which I put together for the workshop. And coming up very soon is this cool charting capability. So it will probably be released in about the next month or so. And what we're looking at there is power stations. So basically, you click on a power station, and it'll actually show you how many, the level of power generated over the last month or so. And you can click on a couple at once, and you'll have a cool chart with all the different layers combined. And, And obviously, because it's an open source platform, other people are starting to build things with it as well. So this company in Sydney called Propeller Aero has just kind of grabbed our software and started using it, and is basically running a company out of it. And that makes people who like words like innovation and entrepreneurial really happy. So they can basically keep on telling the world how great we are and how wise it is to keep funding us, because not only is government getting a service like all these map-based services really cheap, but they're stimulating the economy and causing the ideas boom, and innovation is great, and they're probably right. And another thing we're doing, though, is adding on non-open source bits for special customers that are really interested. So we have this really cool machine learning bit on the side. So basically, if you've got a data set which is not very high detailed, like maybe you've got some sort of attributes at like state level, but you really wish you had them at some like county level or city level. So you use machine learning to find a correlation between your state level data and demographics, and then you've got a much more detailed demographic data set, so you can actually make predictions about where the likely distribution of your attributes are at the more detailed level. And it can give you sort of confidence predictions around that as well. So you know like whether it's just making a wild guess or whether it's actually got some certainty about what it's doing. So that's basically a kind of like a freemium model, you could call it. And lastly, briefly about Data 61, because they paid for me to come over here. I got to say how great we are. We think we're the world's largest data science research organisation, 1,100 people, about half of whom are students. We've got lots of patents. You might know CSIRO because we invented Wi-Fi. That's the claim to fame. And this is the kind of stuff we're doing lots of at the moment. So there's cybersecurity, which I mentioned before, but obviously data statistics and modelling and all that kind of stuff is a pretty big deal for us. We do things like predicting when water pipes are going to break or bridges are going to fail. And I think that's me. I'm done. I didn't go over time. Yes. So I can show the birds if anyone has any questions. Questions?
So at some point you mentioned a team of 3 people. Those are a lot of projects.
Oh, okay, yes. So there were 2 people to begin with, and now it's somewhere between 5 and 20, depending on exactly how you define the limits. There's about 4 or 5 full-time developers, and then there's a bunch of kind of project-related people, UI, UX, project managers, DevOps, all the kind of support stuff. Yes?
So I know your catalog has like a ton of layers in it. Do you have any like metrics to see like how often people are really digging into those, or if they just kind of overwhelmed?
Yes. Well, so we have Google Analytics, which so basically we collect information every time anybody does almost anything, except all of that information pretty much goes straight to the government who kind of fund the service. So I don't think we really see those directly. I don't really know what the results are, but they certainly know about them. In fact, I got an email from one of them yesterday noticing this spike in the middle of the night Australian time, which was during the workshop that was running here yesterday, saying, oh, there must be people using your site. But I think the deeper question there is, to what extent does this actually help people find data? Short answer is we need to do a lot more, and we're actually in the process of investigating a project which will be a completely different approach to helping people actually find data. Because once you get to thousands of data sets, it becomes kind of needle in a haystack, and I think a lot of people are grappling with that problem of actually how to organize data and pull out the sort of the high quality stuff and guide people to what they're probably looking for. If anyone has an answer to that question, I would love to hear it. Cool.